Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is Agnes Forsbicki from the United Nations Environment Program, or UNEP's Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean. I would like to warmly welcome all of you to our webinar on Shaping the Future through Sustainable Public Procurement, Actions from the Caribbean. This is the second webinar of a small series of webinars on sustainable public procurement as part of the knowledge dissemination activities of a joint UNEP and OECS Commission initiative called Strengthening Sustainable Public Procurement in the OECS. This particular webinar has been organized in collaboration with the Organization of American States in its capacity as the Technical Secretariat of the Inter-American Network on Government Procurement, as well as the Inter-American Development Bank. So before we jump into our moderated panel discussion today, I just have a couple of quick words on the objectives and structure of the webinar. We are so pleased to have today with us government representatives from 4 Caribbean countries who will be sharing with you their respective country journeys vis-a-vis sustainable public procurement. Mr. Osario, Mr. Ferguson, Mr. Victor, and Mr. Bennett will all be properly introduced to you in just a moment by Adriana Salazar. Adriana is a procurement specialist at the Inter-American Development Bank, and she will be the one moderating today's panel discussion. So a couple of quick housekeeping remarks. If you'd like to engage in the discussion, please feel free to enter your questions or comments anytime in the question box at the bottom of your screen. There will be a dedicated segment during the moderated discussion for taking questions from the audience. The webinar is also being recorded, and the recording, as well as the presentations, will be uploaded to the One Planet Network website, as well as the website of the Inter-American Network on Government Procurement. And you can see those links here at the bottom of the page. So we will be kicking off the webinar with a few quick opening remarks from colleagues. We'll be hearing first from Beatriz Carneiro, representing UNEP. We will then hear from Hugo Inga, representing the OAS and the INGP Technical Secretariat, and then Adriana Salazar, of course, from the Inter-American Development Bank. So without further ado, I would now like to invite Beatriz Carneiro to the virtual podium. Beatriz is a Program Management Officer for UNEP's new Global Opportunities for Sustainable Development Goals, or Go for SDGs initiative that will be launched next month. Beatriz, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Agnes. Thank you very much. Thank you for this introduction. Yes, as Agnes said, I recently moved to the region, and I am overseeing the whole resource efficiency portfolio, including this project on SPP. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So on behalf of UNEP, we are so pleased to have launched this 3-part webinar series on sustainable public procurement in the Caribbean under the umbrella of the project Strengthening Sustainable Public Procurement in the OECS, that is being implemented in partnership with the OECS Commission and in close cooperation with the Global Climate Fund Antigua and Barbuda Enhancing Direct Access Project. We are also very grateful for the support we received from the Organization of American States in their capacity as the Technical Secretariat of the Inter-American Network on Government Procurement, as well as the Inter-American Development Bank as co-organizer of this event. Thank you very much, colleagues. As some of you may know, sustainable public procurement has been recognized as an important component of the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. It's very well reflected in the SDG 12, Target 12.7, which promotes public procurement practice that are sustainable in accordance with national objectives and priorities. So this is the target that we have in under Goal 12. Sustainable public procurement also has an essential role to play in guiding post-COVID-19 economic recovery, as governments gradually shift their focus from saving lives to rebuilding livelihoods. In fact, just last week at the 22nd meeting of the Forum of the Ministers of Environment of Latin America and the Caribbean, governments across the region, including those in the Caribbean, called to expand the implementation of sustainable public procurement practice as an important tool for increasing resource efficiency and guiding post-COVID economic recovery. Yet not much is known of the important advances that the Caribbean countries have made over recent years vis-à-vis sustainable public procurement. These advances included the drafting of standalone to public procurement legislation, inclusive of sustainability considerations, sustainable public procurement policies, as well as the integration of sustainability criteria in public purchasing. We are also so pleased today to have representatives from Belize, the Bahamas, Grenada, and Jamaica share with not only the status of SPP in their respective countries, but also their journeys inclusive of challenges and lessons learned. UNEP has implemented a project worldwide called SPP and Ecolabel for about 6 years in 14 countries. And we saw that SPP is a tool that can, if well applied, can really shift the patterns to more sustainable patterns of consumption and production, and really shift the needle to more sustainable patterns. So thank you, Mr. Osorio, Mr. Ferguson, Mr. Victor, and Mr. Bennett for your kind participation in this event. We look forward to the enlightening discussion. Thank you very much and have a good webinar.
Thank you, Beatriz, for that great introduction and for setting the scene for us today. I would now like to give the floor to Ugo Inga. Some of you may know Ugo from his work as a specialist at the Department of Effective Public Management of the Organization of American States, which serves as the technical secretariat of the Inter-American Network on Government Procurement. Ugo, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Agnes. Can you hear me very well?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thanks, Agnes. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. From the Organization of American States, as Technical Secretary of the Inter-American Network on Government Procurement, we appreciate the opportunity to participate in this webinar, which is part of the initiative in Sustainable Public Procurement, SPP, with United Environment Program, UNEP, and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS. Regarding this topic, NGP has been working over more than a decade, promoting the dialogue, awareness raising, capacity building, and knowledge generation to the benefit of the public procurement agencies of the hemisphere, in order to consolidate a technical and political agenda in SPP oriented to achieve a social and environmental impact focused on value for money and their public procurement process. For us, it's very important to continue to support from the good practices and lessons learned, diverse SPP actions that are taking place in the Caribbean. That's why this webinar represents an excellent opportunity to gain a third-hand knowledge, experiences from Belize, the Bahamas, Grenada, and Jamaica. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to convey the greetings of Elena Fonseca, Technical Secretary of the NGP, who could not be present due to work reasons. From the NGP, we reiterate our commitment to continuing to support the capacity building in SPP and the consolidation of strategic alliances with other cooperation agencies as the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, which today is represented by Adriana Salazar. Thank you for your attention and stay safe.
Thank you, Ugo, for sharing with us the important work that the Technical Secretariat is doing in the area of sustainable public procurement. I think we can all say that we're very grateful for your organization's contribution to this particular area. I would now like to welcome Adriana Salazar to the virtual podium. Adriana, as I mentioned, is a procurement specialist at the Operations, Financial Management, and Procurement Services Office at the Inter-American Development Bank. Adriana will be sharing with us first her opening remarks. She will then introduce our 4 esteemed panelists and move into the moderated discussion. Adriana, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Agnes. Hello, everyone. First, I want to thank you for the invitation to moderate this panel. I'm very excited to be here to learn about some of the Caribbean experiences in implementing sustainable procurement. We are all very aware of the strategic nature of public procurement and how this can be used to promote policy objectives. Sustainable procurement, as we all know, can be used as a tool to minimize adverse impacts on the environment and maximize the social ones. And for over a decade, as Hugo mentioned, the IDB, in close collaboration with the Inter-American Network on Government Procurement, has supported the Latin American and Caribbean countries in their efforts to consolidate a sustainable public procurement agenda. Actually, last year, we conducted a diagnostic to map the progress in the implementation of SPP in 23 LAC countries, and we found that 20 of them already have a legal framework for public procurement that facilitates SPP implementation. This was very exciting news. Also, we found that 21 have implemented specific actions. 10 of them have implementation tools in place, and 4 countries even have measurement and monitoring systems. Some special progress has been made in adopting criteria to promote the participation of MSMEs and gender inclusion. All efforts also have been made to implement environmental criteria such as energy efficiency labels, quality certifications for recycled goods, constructing green buildings, and LED lighting in streetlights, amongst many others. This analysis reveals that in the region there is outstanding work underway. And today, we are joined by a select group of Caribbean countries to discuss the actions they have taken to support this important agenda. So without further ado, let me introduce our panelists. We have first Artemio Osorio from Belize. He is the director of the procurement unit in the Ministry of Finance. Artemio has a career that spans 3 decades. He is now involved in overseeing the new procurement law for Belize with funding from the Inter-American Development Bank. Secondly, we have Daniel Ferguson from the Bahamas. He also entered the procurement profession 3 decades ago. We have a lot of experienced people with us today. He led the drafting of the new public procurement bill that was tabled to the Parliament last year, and he's currently leading the drafting team for the development of the public procurement regulations. Mr. Ferguson has also provided guidance and support for the development of an e-procurement system in his country. We then are joined by Terence Victor from Grenada. He has been part of the Grenada Public Service for over 20 years. He is currently the acting Chief Procurement Office in the Ministry of Finance. Since 2010, Mr. Victor has been involved in paving the way for new public procurement legislation through the public sector. And at present, he is involved in advancing Grenada's sustainable development agenda through initiatives in public procurement processes. And finally, we have Andre Bennett from Jamaica. He is the Chief Public Procurement Policy Officer in the Office of Public Procurement Policy at the Ministry of Finance and Public Service. Mr. Bennett holds a Master of Law degree in Public Procurement Law and Strategy from Bangor University, a Bachelor of Laws degree from the University of London, and a Bachelor of Science in Pure Chemistry from the University of the West Indies. So very excited to have you all 4 here. And we're now going to enter our first round of questions, our first session. And before that, just let me give you a little bit of context before I get into the questions. We know that the Caribbean region is making important advances in sustainable public procurement. There are a number of Caribbean countries that have included sustainability considerations in their public procurement legislation. Some of them have even designed dedicated sustainable public procurement policies. Sustainability criteria is also being integrated into the procurement cycle, and supportive tools such as guidelines have been developed. Of course, each country's journey towards sustainable procurement is unique. So in this session, I want to ask you if each of you could please describe your country's status vis-a-vis sustainable procurement, the consultative process that was taken to advance this agenda, the key stakeholders that were consulted, the areas of sustainable development, either social, environmental, or economic, that are being prioritized in your countries. And it will also be very interesting to hear any specific examples of its application in public procurement. So Artemio, why don't we start with you, please? The floor is yours. Welcome to the virtual world. There you are. There you are. We can see you perfectly. You probably have to unmute your mic.
That's it. Well, I am glad to be here. Good morning, everybody. Good evening for those that are in different time zones. Good afternoon also. I want to present some recent development procurement, sustainable public procurement in Belize that we have, and I would like to begin by showing what has happened here. Showing part of my screen here. I am the director of the public procurement unit in Belize, and we have been working in some areas. Let me give you a quick facts about Belize. Our area is very small. Our population also is very small. Distribution, we have 6 districts, 9 towns. The rural distribution is about 50%. Our biggest city is about 80,000 inhabitants. An average population per town is about 20,000. Villages, we have over 50 villages across Belize, and this also provides an insight into the problems that we have in providing services to these villages because they're a little separated. We have a government of parliamentary democracy, and we got our independence from Great Britain in 1981. We have a fixed exchange rate of $1 to $2 Belize, which helps in providing stability in the financial sector. As has been said in this session, all of us are working on a new procurement plan, and we should have a draft by November 2021. At the moment, we have a consultant working on it, and we are implementing some recent changes that the new government has introduced. For example, introducing a review commission for contracts and so forth. Sustainability issues we will try to include as much as possible. For example, the domestic content, whole life cycle costs, provision for medium, small, and micro, small, and medium enterprises. So any legislation that we have at the moment is pertaining to sustainable public procurement is in reality national legislation. It's not specific to the procurement area, but national. So now, beginning to look at it, what I would like to introduce is the Growth and Sustainable Development Strategy for Belize, which began in 2016 and is being completed at the moment. And this Growth and Sustainable Development Strategy was developed through a participatory and consultative process with government agencies, the private sector, for example, the Chamber of Commerce and others. We have the civil society for national non-government organizations. We have the unions, the public service unions, the teachers unions, and also public consultations that we have. The strategy includes 5 critical success factors that are linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. One is the optimal income and investment, enhance social cohesion and resilience, sustain and improve health of the natural environment, historic and cultural assets, and enhance citizen security and governance. These critical success factors include different strategies that in turn include sustainable public policies. We taking on the first one, optimal income and investment. This area deals with micro, small, and medium enterprises. One world strategy that was carried out back in 2012 dealt with the classification of what is micro, what is small business, what is classified across the country. It was noted that there are many many companies in Belize. We have most of them are very small, and most of them would fall into the area of micro and small businesses. The classification that was used was how many people are employed, how much investment is taken has been made in the business, and also what is the turnover. So it was a classification I think was very good. This classification includes, for example, very small farmers, food vendors. I include these food vendors because it's very important, because we buy a lot of food for the army, for example, the Coast Guard and so forth. And so it is a very important market for farmers, and also other services that are made, also including caterers. In services, this includes the services that are provided by this small sector. Security services, we have electrical and AC maintenance services, taxes, contractors that are small construction. I put this small construction because these are the people who do repairs to schools, to hospitals, and repairs in general, and also people that provide janitorial services for government offices. Public procurement employs this sector, and it requires that all have an account at a bank or credit union to make payments. So we don't make any cash payments. We don't make any payments by check. And so you say you want to sell to the government, you have to go get an account at the bank, and then we make payment directly to the bank. So this is trying to the social inclusion strategy, which would form part of this critical success factor. It ends saying that the medium enterprises are already more social, included in the financial sector. The enhanced social cohesion and resilience includes gender policy, includes women and youth in farming activities. For example, not only men, when they provide credit schemes, they provide also to women, and they have some programs whereby we have identified the villages that are working in farming initiatives. What is the size of the village? How many are men, women, youth of below 18 years, and exactly where they find their markets. They try to work on value chains, and having resilience in farming. For example, the planting in high areas to avoid floods, and also to provide other forms of infrastructure. Youth policy includes sports mostly because we want to promote sports, and this also includes the infrastructure that goes along with sports, and provide stadiums, that sort of thing. Labor issues are included here also. This deals with dealing with hazardous chemicals, having the proper gear, to use, and also there's the issue of trying to reduce child labor. We have a program that is called Fair Trade that is used in the sugar industry, whereby they say that you get a premium if you don't include child labor in that area. Because we have some developments in social security, in the social security area. The law was changed to provide a card from birth. At first it was 18 years you would get your card, and the law was changed so that though as you are born you can get a card, and that will be the number that you will use all over your life. The other amendment that was made to Social Security was self-payments, whereby you can pay for your own Social Security, and so you can ensure yourself of having a pension when you reach pensionable age. There also has been talk of increased contributions, but because of COVID-19, these have had to be put in the hold. The also one is the access to health, which deals with that health insurance, and also here they promote proper nutrition, to avoid things with too much sugar, issues like that. No, number 3 deals with the environment. historic and cultural assets. There is this issue that we have to take care of the environment, because the environment is very important for our economic activities. Belize, like many other Caribbean countries, we depend a lot on tourism, and so it provides. In Belize, one out of every 4 jobs is related to tourism. So it's a very important source of our economy. And so the coastal zone management deals with mangrove protection, because that's where the fishes spawn, and there are areas that are protected during spawn. For example, when it is the shrimp season, they're spawning, you cannot fish in an area and so forth. We also protect coral reefs, and this is related to tourism areas. There's also a national protected area system. Belize has a lot of areas that are protected. If you noticed at the beginning, our territory is not too big, but our population is also not too big. So we have a lot of areas that are in reserve, and they have programs like carbon sequestration, sustainable logging. There's uh, an NGO that is called Program for Belize, that do the sustainable logging, and also you can add there's wildlife protection in these areas. Eh, there's also the climate change issues, the propensity to dealing with propensity to flood, loss of coastal areas. So there is also this. That was said. I said before, the promotion of tourism in visiting historic and cultural archaeological sites. There's policy of to reuse, recycle policies. Here we have a first building, a green building that is being built right here in our capital, Belmopan, where the building will have a lot of natural light, a lot of combination of light and electrical light, natural light and electrical light. It will also have a combination of natural ventilation and ACs. The ACs are all inverter types. And also what is very interesting is that the recycling of water. All gray waters will be treated and recycled, and you reuse. It will be rainwater collected and then used in the to flush toilets, and also for landscaping practices that we have. There is the issue of garbage disposal also, where we have been working on transfer stations. These transfer stations gather the garbage from the cities basically into an area, into the around the cities, and they are all then transported to a central regional dump. Basically, it's a big area that we're doing. We have the project is still undergoing, and it provides jobs to small trucking farms. Um, they employ a lot of people in that area. They're also trying to reuse, recycle, and in the transfer stations, garbage will be separated, and what can be reused, what can be um, and or recycled. We have a policy that where we are phasing out one-use grocery plastic bags. By April this year, it will be illegal to hold plastic bags, and all shops will not be able to have these shops when you go buying. They would have these shops. These bags that they give you, that will be phased out. They're promoting use of cloth bags, and that the people bring their own bags. You're also phasing out drinking straws, foam plates, plastic cups. All of those things are being phased out, and they're being replaced with paper-based products. We also have a policy that is returnable deposit on bottles. This has been on the deposit on glass bottles has been on forever, that I can recognize. And then in 2010 we introduced the plastic bottles returnable policy, whereby plastic bottles that are used for water, soft drinks, beer, juices, whatever. They have a little economic incentive at 5 cents per pint. They buy it at the shop, and so we have a little incentive to keep the place clean. So you will not see any plastic bottles of like Coca-Cola and so forth around, because they are all picked up and sold for a small contribution there. Yeah, the enhanced security, perhaps we don't have much sustainable issues in this regard, but what we're doing here is we buy vehicles for patrols, both in the urban and highways, and these vehicles are purchased on a whole life cost basis, not basically not cheapest price. We ensure that they have warranty, service, and spare parts. The government of Belize has made a policy to use only diesel vehicles. They are more durable, they are less contaminant, and also they are I mean, these are a little expensive, a little more expensive when you buy them, like a $5,000 difference between a diesel pickup and a gasoline pickup, but the operating cost is cheaper over the life cycle. This policy also applies to other sectors. As I said before, it's not only government procurement that is involved, it is a national law practice, because we have policies that we charge more duties if the vehicles are older and are more than 4 cylinders. So there's an incentive to use small engine vehicles. The last success factor deals with governance, and this strategy includes the making of this procurement law and the issues of the Integrity Commission and the oversight bodies, the Contractor General, the Auditor General, and this is the fighting corruption, so that we make better uses of the resources that are available to us. We have the UN Charter Against Corruption, which is called the UNCAC, and also we have this program SSIC, which is mostly from the Organization of American States. But these are the 5 success factors. And as I said before, some projects are working at the moment, are being implemented. We have Climate Vulnerability Resilience Project. This is for flood control in Belize City, especially the building seawalls issues. They even have this screw where the Archimedes screw where they can pump water out of the flood areas. We have a response to emergencies by the electricity company. We have a dam, so they have to keep track of what of the flood cycle, and also the droughts, because if there's drought, there's no water to make the electricity in that area. We have this program, Resilient Rural Belize, where they, as I have explained before, is working with small farmers. But it is rural, so it is in the small villages, and it is working with farmers, teaching them about little finance, better quality seeds to use, better planting in high areas to avoid floods, and also there is a project. The second program to that is to make better roads so that they can bring their produce to market. The solid waste management, I had spoken about this before. It is the transfer stations. The work continues there, and it's still going on. Now, this was second part for the second part of the presentation. But what I would like to see is that the suppliers have adapted well to sustainable procurement practice. For example, the vehicles, all the distributors in Belize are very aware of what the government buys, and so they have turned to these areas. The supply of energy efficient electronics, most of these items are imported. So whatever is in the latest technology are what comes, and they are phasing out ACs, air conditions that are not energy efficient and so forth. We have LED lights in government building. There's a policy of making converting all lights in our buildings to LED lights and inverter ACs. We also the issue of using less paper as possible, duplex printers, and a lot of emails. Well, we have the sorry. Well, I had spoken about the sovereign returnable bottles policy that's still ongoing, and it will continue on as we go along. The company says that the biggest market that they have is the glass bottles that have a deposit. So they have no incentive to stop producing those type of returnable glass bottles. The other one is the phasing out of the plastic cups, straws, and everything, and they're promoting the supply of cloth shopping bags, and this is spawning a little cottage industry where some people using their initiative to produce cloth bags that can be used by the public. The public sector is the biggest procurer, and so the way they like set the stage, they are the ones who allow private investment to invest in these new products that are energy efficient and also are less harmful to the environment. So if we buy, for example, if they're making a new building, they would buy all new inverter ACs, and that would enable any supplier to invest in this area. The efficiency also spills to other sectors, and they begin implementing the same practices. For example, we have the private commercial banks. They would use it. They would use it also, and also large companies. So I am basically that is what we have. As I said before, we are working on a new law, and we're working on a new law. The only the problems that we have had is that in some cases we have not been too successful. We have not had 100% response in that areas because there are changes in personnel in the government, and sometimes they are unable to meet. This COVID-19 has caused a lot of people losing their jobs, and the government in trying to help has had to incur a lot of indebtedness, and now Belize is very indebted. With that, I will leave it, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Artemio, for walking us through the very comprehensive strategy that Belize has. I've seen a lot of progress has been made, and there are actions in every dimension. Exciting to see how much have you done in this agenda. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Daniel Ferguson to share the Bahamas experience. Mr. Ferguson, welcome.
Thank you, Andriana, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Actually, my first time being a panelist, so excuse me if I'm a bit nervous. First of all, let me just quickly give you an overview of what is actually happening in the Bahamas as it pertains to public procurement. In 2016, the government of Bahamas, in collaboration with the IADB Bank, developed what was called a public financial management reform project. The government of Bahamas borrowed some $33 million to reform 4 areas of its financial management system, and public procurement was one of them. To date, as I indicated, the project started in 2016, of which I am the coordinator for the reform of the public procurement. And to date, we have had a draft of a public procurement bill, which has recently been tabled in our parliament on July 28, 2020. And we had a first reading this week, and hopefully the debate will begin next week on the procurement bill. Regulations is already drafted to coincide with that particular bill, and we expect to establish a new public procurement department, which will have oversight of the regulations and will have oversight of all the procuring entities and units to ensure that they adhere to the bill and regulations. So in saying that, I will be, because of the time constraint, I'll be very brief and basically elaborate on one initiative that the Bahamas had undergone with regards to our environment. As you might know, the Bahamas has a population of about 400,000 people. We do not have a vibrant manufacturing industry. We may have light industries, but not a manufacturing industry per se. And we have a very limited amount of natural resources. So the environment plays the protection of the environment plays a very important role to us. The Bahamas is a string of islands scattered across hundreds of miles of vast, pristine turquoise seas. But there's one downside to this. To this paradise islands of ours that we call home. Our delicate ecosystem, which is fundamental to our health and livelihood, is in danger of one particular item: plastic styrofoam. And the use of plastic and styrofoam is not a new problem for us, because for decades we have watched plastic trash accumulate in our waters, sometimes even by our partners in the cruise industry. There have been incidents where cruise ships have been fined, not by the Bahamas government, but fined by their own country, some of the countries where they have a port at home. So if we don't break this habit, we will find ourselves in having major issues. And as I said, trash, plastic has accumulated on our waters, on our beaches, and all around us. In an effort to develop an effective solution to both this issue and the issue of what we had at the time, a crippling landfill and a dump site that was totally unregulated, the government of the Bahamas saw it necessary to draft legislation to eradicate one of the largest and more burdensome contributors of both of these issues, which again I say is plastic. So therefore, in the year 2019, the Environment Control of Plastic Pollution Bill 2019 was passed. But prior to that passing of the bill, there were educational sessions for stakeholders to understand exactly the purpose of this bill. We had forums that the major stakeholders, such as the citizenry and particularly the business houses, were all part of forums, lectures, etc., for them to understand exactly what the Bahamas would be gaining and losing if we did not pass this bill. Of course, like I said, the bill was passed and a timeline was created to ensure that there would have been an orderly transition, because the bill prohibits the single use of plastic foodware and non-biodegradable and biodegradable single-use plastic bags. It also prohibits the release of balloons and regulates the use of compostable single-use plastic bags. Now, this was very, very, very new to us. And like I said, because of the time constraints, I will provide you with how the transition of this period from plastic to cloth bags to a whole new different food with. I would tell you that the large amount of the citizenry, even the business houses, were at first not very pleased with the transition. And in the next session, I will tell you how it angered the citizenry, which I'm a part of. I'm guilty because I was a bit confused as we transition as well. So I just wanted to stay within that particular, as it being a fresh initiative to the Bahamas. I just wanted to briefly give you an idea of what we did in that particular circumstances. Of course, the Bahamas has its other environmental planning and protection bills, which protects our land and sea parks, our fishing zones, of which the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, along with the Bahamas National Trust, are the regulators. And so we are well on our way in protecting one aspect of our environment. Andrea, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ferguson. Interesting to see how have you progress on the regulatory aspects. And now we're gonna give the floor to our next panelist, Mr. Victor. Can you please join us and tell us about the Grenada experience? We can hear you very well, and we can see your presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome all. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are from the Caribbean island of Grenada. I just want to say it is quite an honor for me to be making this presentation, updating you and the rest of the world where we are with regards to our sustainability in public procurement. And just by background, I want to say over the past decade, except for last year, of course, Grenada has been very much involved in matters regarding sustainability, sustainable development, achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and those areas, the concern for the ozone layer and similar areas were of major concern to Grenada. Remembering that we are a small island of only 133 square miles and a population of just about 110,000. So the concern was there for quite a while now. In 2014, we passed a Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act, which would be the main piece of legislation in guiding our procurement processes. We did recognize so that subsequent to the passing of that act, the subject of sustainable development was not included. So we went in 2018, we took an action to make amendments to our act. And we did include as a specific objective to promote local industry, sustainable development, and protection of the environment. So that was a small but very profound step we took to include that objective in our Procurement Act, so that even without the regulations and the formal procedures, there is something there that can guide us, that we can say that we have been protected by the Act in including sustainability in our procurement procedures. While that has been happening, we also took some other measures outside of procurement. We there was in 2019 a ban on the importation of styrofoam products because we recognize the negative impact on the environment that such material can cause. And we later on that year, we put a ban on the use of single-use plastic bags. So all these measures, together with continued effort towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, we also had continue to work on a Sustainable Development Plan 2035. That plan is still being drafted, and hopefully we would have a complete document where we can show in that document where we would like to be at the year 2035. So these are the early measures that have been taken with Grenada's concern for the environment, Grenada's concern for having a sustainable country, being climate resilient, and really trying to make a better country for our citizens. So with specific regards to this policy, we sought and received assistance from the World Bank, who provided us with a consultant. And in that technical assistance, we met with the internal stakeholders firstly, including our heads of departments, our permanent secretaries, and senior government officials, really introducing the concept of sustainability in our procurement procedures and the benefits that can be derived for the country as a whole. We also met with the external stakeholders, mainly the suppliers and the other state-owned enterprises, where we spoke about the benefits and the change that Grenada is looking to make with regards to sustainability in our procurement processes. Added to that, we conducted, with the help of the World Bank also, we conducted a spend analysis, which really assisted us in looking at the data of government expenditure over a 4-year period. So that database provided us with lots of information as to how much money was spent on goods, works, and services, which were the departments that were spending the money, which are the big spenders, what were the funds being spent on, what were the major areas of spending, and who were the suppliers. So that provided us with a lot of information that we would use in developing our sustainability in procurement policy, and in really coming up with what actions that we are to take in going forward. So with that, we went on to have a draft policy. It's really not a completed policy, I would say. It is one that we have taken a decision to tread very lightly, and it is better to have a very sort of a mild policy in the beginning, and you leave room for improvement and updating as the years goes by, because we recognize that this is a new concept. Introduction of sustainable requirements in public procurement procedures is a relatively new concept for suppliers, for the major stakeholders, and it would take a change of culture, a change of thinking for many of us. So we took a deliberate action to start small, pick what we would say the low-hanging fruits, and as the years go by, we would improve and we would get stronger as we go ahead. But the document really, it emphasizes government's commitment towards protecting the environment through sustainable measures in our procurement practices. Specifically, it states that government of Grenada commits to integrating environmental, social and economic considerations into its procurement processes in a relevant and proportionate manner to ensure that all goods, works, and services purchased deliver value for money while maximizing environmental and social benefits. Right, so that is clearly stated in the policy, which has been endorsed and approved by cabinet. So there is the political will to implement this policy. It is not something that we just develop and it will be put on a shelf until we're ready for it sometime later. But it is a very active policy which has the backing of the highest level of within our government, the executive, which is our cabinet. So the policy, it's continued to really state government will use the sustainable public procurement to contribute to the delivery of Government of Grenada National Sustainable Development Plan 2035 and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It also states that it would promote compliance with relevant environmental and social laws and regulations as they apply to public procurement. And we have made a definite objective, a specific objective of achieving a target of 25% of government contracts awarded annually to contain sustainability requirements. That is a target that we have set. It's just one of the targets that we have set, and we hope we could accomplish within a year or two. So that really is where we are with regards to our sustainable policy in procurement. But while that is happening, we, or even before the policy, we had taken very clear and decisive measures in our procurement. We, for example, in the procurement of air conditioning units, we would check with our Department of Energy, and they will provide us with what would be the specifications that we can use in our procurement processes that would give us the best air conditioning units that is environmentally friendly, that would conserve energy, and that would at the same time be value, would give us value for money. And that goes for other appliances as well. We would make sure that any piece of equipment that is being bought, we would not simply look at the price, but we would look at the overall lifetime cost of that piece of equipment, including the cost to maintain, the cost for parts, and nowadays we're looking at the cost to dispose, because that too has shown that there is a cost in disposing some of these pieces of equipment. So we look at the overall cost. We also have taken a measure to ensure that any piece of appliance that has been bought, it would be energy saving, right? While there is no set standard or labels in the Caribbean region, we look at standards from other parts of the world, and we sort of use it as a guide in determining whether or not that we should purchase a particular piece of equipment that would be energy saving. Other measures, in the past, we focused a bit on disposal, because in the past it was quite easy to dispose items that maybe weren't or maybe shouldn't have been disposed in the manner. We have chairs and office chairs and office desks that would be easily dumped because they have a slight problem or just missing a part, or the covering gone bad, and that would have been easily been disposed in the dump. What we have done, or what we are continuing to do, is to repair we have had arrangements with suppliers who could do repairs and recovering, reupholstering these furniture. And that has shown to save us quite a lot, because those items could have been easily been dumped. We also take on a measure of, or we are looking to begin procuring common use items used by government, for example, toilet tissue, which is used by every government department. We are looking to procure toilet tissue in a centralized manner, where we hope that we can have significant savings as a result of the large purchase and the economies of scales, and we can get also discounts. So we are looking to procure, to begin with toilet tissue, to procure in not with every ministry or department doing its own procurement, but rather a centralized procurement through framework agreements. And we intend to move on to paper, copy paper, and other items, stationery, disinfectants, computers and printers, ink cartridges, and other items that are used throughout government service. We intend to procure these items through framework agreement in a centralized manner, so that we can have the benefits of economies of scales and discounts while we still have value for money. And that is sort of where we are with regards to our sustainable procurement policy. The current focus, unfortunately, well, I must say that for last year, we all know was a challenging year, and the focus has been shifted a bit towards COVID-related issues. However, we still are working to do many things with regards to our policy. We are to amend our regulations that will include specific procedures in how we go about really in a formal way, including sustainability criteria in our procurement processes. We continue to seek capacity building and developing meaningful sustainability criteria in our processes, especially with construction. That is one area where we recognize a number of criteria could be added in the procurement process. However, we do not have the necessary capacity and technical competence just yet in order to really include criteria regarding construction in our procurement practices. So we are seeking to build some capacity in this area. The Central Procurement Unit, we continue to provide leadership and training and guidance in developing and implementing the policy. We engage the suppliers on a fairly regular basis. We keep them updated as to where we are and what government intends to do in the coming years. We continue to work with other regional and international bodies, such as World Bank and UNEP and OECS, to provide or to receive whatever assistance available in helping us to build capacity in this very, very important area. Yes, the policy is just about 2 years or so now, years old now. We're looking to add to it now to include maybe some more profound and decisive steps so that we can go further as we really raise the level in sustainability in our procurement processes. So this is what I just want to say. I really thank everyone for the opportunity to let you know that Grenada is very committed towards improving and towards having a full and comprehensive sustainable procurement policy in the very near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Victor. Very impressive progress you've made. You've touched upon very important aspects. I can see your process has been very well structured, and it is very important to have an enable context. You've done that. You have a clear policy set up. You have a clear target, which is also important to walk through this journey. I'm very impressed with what you've done, and you are one of the few countries in the region who has a specific sustainable public procurement policy for sustainability. That is a major achievement, and I've seen you already have some results even, and you have ambition on continuing with the criteria on construction. So congratulations indeed for the work Grenada is doing. So now it's time for our last panelist. We have Mr. Andre Bennett from Jamaica. Andre, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And thanks a million for the opportunity to share this morning. And I'm, in view of the time constraints, I'm going to skip a few slides of this presentation. But I wanted to sort of make a quick comparison between Jamaica's own efforts and what we've pursued through public procurement, which is distinct from the experiences of my other colleagues. So just to say quickly that we are equally interested in environmental protection aspects, but we have pursued those largely through environmental laws and trade laws, etc. So we've taken a different approach. We've not made those procurement linked policies. However, what we've done is pursued economic and social aspects through procurement. So just a real quick run through of how it started. In 2008, the record shows that there was intergovernmental agreement that there was some way that procurement could help MSMEs and maybe achieve a whole range of other economic and social benefits. And in 2010, the government of Jamaica obtained assistance through the INGP and the IDB. Shout out to the INGP and the IDB for your assistance in that regard. As we continued along our procurement legislative efforts, in 2017, we approached the establishment of this policy for offsets. And essentially what we wanted to do was to create a space in procurement to serve as a sustainable form of social safety for marginalized and disadvantaged groups, disadvantaged economic actors, etc., and to create local employment, amongst other things. And eventually, we had our legislation and the 2015 Public Procurement Act, which is now in force, and had specific objectives for the encouragement of local participation, as well as for carving out a space for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And then in our enabling regulations, what we had was the special and differential treatment policies sort of coalesced into legislation. And those special and differential treatment policies had three aims, as you see on your screen: to encourage the participation of Jamaican suppliers in public procurement opportunities, to increase the capacity of Jamaican suppliers to compete for procurement contracts, and to develop Jamaican industries. And so what was created were two broad types of special and differential treatment measures. On the one hand, there's a domestic margin of preference, which we're all familiar with, the application of a margin on the bid price of the international supplier who is a lower bidder than the local supplier. And then if the local supplier's bid falls within the margin, then the local supplier earns the contract. But our domestic margin of preference is no ordinary domestic margin of preference, because it requires that for the local supplier to earn the contract, he must show 35% domestic content in his supply, or 35% local content. So what it meant was, if goods were to be supplied as a part of the contract, in terms of the manufacturing, the raw materials, etc., it must amount to 35%. If it were labor or services, if there were 10 laborers, 3.5 of them would have to be Jamaican. So the certification of content is handled through another mechanism, and we actually haven't operationalized this measure, so I won't speak much more about it. And then we had set-asides, which had two what I call flavors. On the one hand, we had industry set-asides, and I heard the previous speaker, Mr. Victor from Grenada, suggesting that Grenadans recognized that there were things like reupholstering of furniture and things related to textiles and fabric that could be locally done. And so this industry set aside pretty much says that there are a couple of nascent industries in Jamaica. We need to give them capacity, etc. So Jamaican suppliers in those industries have the benefit of this set aside, and it's to 100%. So once the procurement entity or the procuring entity needs these requirements, it must first offer those contracts to Jamaicans. And of course, if we can't find suitable Jamaicans, then we move to non-Jamaicans. But then the one that we've kind of made some progress in is for the MSMEs, the MSME set-asides. And the policy pretty much says that the government has set aside, and it's an aspirational target only, 20% of the total government budget for MSMEs. And how we actually operationalize it is we use MSME-only competitions. And what it says is once a procuring entity is convinced that there are at least 2 capable suppliers of its requirements, and these suppliers are MSMEs according to the definitions in the order, a competition for MSMEs alone must be done. And this is capped at 50 million Jamaican dollars, which is approximately 100,000 United States dollars. And so there is this broad open competition. The MSME suppliers submit their requirements for qualification, eligibility, etc., and the contract is awarded according to the normal types of methods. And so, I mean, I've just shown you what our contract notices kind of look like. This one is from one of the main housing development, government-run housing development agencies. And you can see that this was only December 2020, and bids were received in 2021 January. And so, you know, there's the explanation of the order, and it says clearly the criteria for determination of the enterprise are set out in the order, and those things are disclosed in the solicitation documents. This is a competition only for MSMEs, and the solicitation documents also set out the rest of the technical specifications, etc. This is another type of advertisement that's placed in the local papers, and you can see it says special and differential treatment, and only those bids from qualified MSMEs would be considered for contract award. And so this is the approach we have been taking. And so far, I mean, there are a few bits of experiences that I'd want to share, but I'll reserve those for future engagements on this topic. So that's Jamaica's experience, and I hope you'll be able to learn something from it.
We did indeed, Mr. Bennett. Thank you very much. As we've seen, everyone has a different journey, but all are making efforts to move towards a sustainable public procurement agenda. As Mr. Bennett mentioned, they're more focused on the social dimension, and thank you for the specific examples. Very, very enlightening. So now that we've heard from all of you, now it's time to hear from the audience. We want to have some time for questions. Unfortunately, we won't have time for a second session with the other set of questions we had planned, but I think we're already touched upon some of these other aspects that we're planning on discussing on this second session, so I think we're perfectly fine. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'll be the voice of the audience. So I'm going to go ahead and read some of the questions we have received. Some of them are specific to some of you. And let's see, what can you tell us about this? This question is for Mr. Osorio. And it says, during contract management, how do your procuring entities ensure suppliers who declare or subscribe to your anti-child labor measure are not engaging in the activity, and what remedial measures do you have in place to tackle this? And also, apart from child labor, he's asking if there are other trafficking or slavery practices that are tackled through your procurement framework. Mr. Osorio. What can you tell us about this? The floor is all yours. I think you need to unmute your mic. Still, we still can hear you. Maybe try again. Nope, still. Maybe try again. Let me see if I can do that. Ah, there you go. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. This program that I had mentioned is specific to the sugar industry because there is a fair trade program that we have with the United Kingdom, whereby we receive a premium if there is no child labor being employed in the fields. And by child labor, it includes from I think up to 18 years that supposed to be in school, and so they're not to be working in the fields. How do we monitor those? There is the Sugar Industry Control Board that have a compliance unit that when they would go about looking for they go in the fields, properly in the fields, they have identified the fields all over the district that has this industry, and they would go all about, and they would have to fill out when it's being sugar is being exported to England, it would specify that was no child labor included in this area, and therefore they would be able to obtain a premium. The premium is the incentive really because they get a better price for the sugar. In the other areas, it is not. I don't know about any it's a general law that they have, but I have heard in the market, in the vegetable market, for example, some kids are coming around asking for jobs, and they say, well, we can't give you a job, sorry, because it's against the law. And in that regard, it is the people in the environment also that would look in this area. They have a compliance unit, environmental compliance unit, and since this would fall in areas that deal with special agriculture products, they would help us in that regard. I hope this covers your question.
Now we have a second and final question. This is also from the audience, and is for Mr. Ferguson. Our audience member says, I have read the PP bill and have some opinions on its promotion of SPP, and he's planning to write a paper on this. However, he's interested in your opinion. What do you think on the 2020 bill and its attempt to promote sustainable public procurement? And do you think that if the bill should be amended to include some additional provisions that will promote SPP?
Yes, my views on the public procurement bill that's presently before our Parliament is that this bill will bring forth for the Bahamas the first time a new era of how we will do business, how the government will do business within the community and the outside world. Never before has there been any set of rules, regulations, or even a bill that has actually come into effect. So we are waiting patiently for this bill to come into effect because we anticipate that the bill would assist in the enhancement of transparency and competitiveness. Even before the bill is being passed, we have already developed an electronic government procurement system, which is actually produced wonders for us in terms of transparency and competitiveness. We've taken into consideration the aspects of our medium, small enterprises, and there is special mention of them in the bill. And we hope that they will be given some domestic preference as we go and we conduct our business throughout our community. So we see some major changes that will come with the passing of this bill. For example, we will have definitive processes that will now be legislated. Then we also have what we call a tribunal, because as it exists now, there really is no place, no one single place that you can go and actually lodge a complaint of a misprocurement, or if you think something has gone wrong. So, and we also would have what is called a disbarment process. So all of these areas would be legislated, and it would bring the Bahamas on even keel with best practices. I hope I've answered some of your questions.
Excellent, Mr. Ferguson, thank you. Now, we do have time for one additional question, and this is going to be for Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, what industries have been identified for the set-aside, and how, if you can tell us very briefly, are they certifying the required 35% content from local industries?
Sure, thanks for that question. So the industries that have been set aside include those involved in the trade in printing images on fabric, banners, posters, etc., manufacture assembly of furniture for schools or offices, manufacture assembly of uniforms for public officers and students. So essentially textiles industries, the manufacture of an assembly of drapery and related accessories, the manufacture and assembly of automotive products, and the manufacture and assembly of national flag and national emblems. And so those, maybe not industries, but those are the specific areas that may benefit from the set aside. In respect of the certification of content, so we have two institutions. There's a standards institution, the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, as well as the trade board that's currently involved in the certification of country of origin for or domestic and international trade requirements. And so the approach to the certification of content for the purposes of the certificate of origin is similar. As I say, though, that's in development. And so I don't have much to say on specific measures, but that's generally how we're going to be going about it.
Thank you. Well, we don't want to leave Mr. Victor without asking some of the questions the audience has had for him. So, Mr. Victor, you're not out of our reach yet. Just a final question for you. What challenges can you tell us that you've faced through the journey on developing the Sustainable Public Procurement policy and its implementation? Because we sometimes learn more from the obstacles than from the successes. So that'll be interesting to hear from you. I don't think we can see you or hear you. Are you still here with us? Yes, we can see you now.
Right. So yes, thank you for the question. And indeed, we did face some challenges at the beginning. And one of the major challenges we faced was how to convince our senior officials that this is something that would benefit Grenada. And the main issue was that with sustainable products, there comes a cost, right? And the initial cost is usually high, although in the long run, it would be cheaper. And the complaint was that, well, there is not enough budget to purchase sustainable products. So that was a major concern, and it took some persuasion and some sharing of information and knowledge to let them understand what is meant by life cycle costing, and that in the long run, even if you purchase something at a higher cost now, in the long run, it will be more beneficial for us. It would save us money. Also, with some of the suppliers, we had there was a sort of a fear that they would be left out of the market, and it was believed that government is looking to go elsewhere, and they would be left out of having opportunities to supply the government. And certainly that was not the case. We had to tell them that they are the suppliers, but they would have to work along with us so that they can source whatever sustainable products that we are seeking. And eventually they understood, and they are fully on, or more or less very much on board with us in this process now.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Victor, for sharing these experiences. And well, thank you all for sharing your experience. It's very exciting to hear from the ones that are actually in the field implementing. It's not the same as reading a diagnostic. It's in opportunities like this that things come to life, and it's very inspiring to see how sustainable public procurement is becoming a reality for all. Congratulations to the Caribbean countries that join us today for the great progress they have made. And now it's time to wrap up. This is all from my side. And to give us the final remarks, I want to invite Farid Jacker. He is a program officer in the UNEP's Economy Division in Paris. Since 2008, he has been leading the work of UNEP in the area of sustainable public procurement and represents UNEP on the advisory committee of the Global One Planet Sustainable Public Procurement Program, which oversees the implementation of ground projects aimed at assisting member states in the implementation of SPP. Farid, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adriana. Can you hear me?
We can hear you well.
Okay. Thanks for the great moderation and for very interesting presentations. I learned a lot. And I'm really happy to see that there is a high level of awareness about SPP in the 4 countries that presented their work, and also a high level of commitment, especially in, I noticed that Grenada has developed a policy statement, which is really something we encourage many countries to do, all countries to do, and it's not very present in all the countries on which we work, and so we really commend this activity and this legal progress. In terms of issues, I noticed that the countries are very dependent on tourism, and so there is concern about plastic, trash. There is also concern about social issues. SMEs came up really often, need to develop and have enough jobs for lower income people and revenues. The issue of circular economy, I'm happy that there is awareness about these policies. For example, the fact that repair is now encouraged, and we had the example of the furnitures. And I noticed also the progress in the legal and policy fields. So, for example, public procurement laws and acts have been revised, have been improved in the 4 countries to make them more conducive to sustainable public procurement, whether it is in the social areas or environmental areas. So this is really the basis for SPP to happen. So this is a very positive development. Also, the fact that we have in majority of countries sustainable development plans and strategies is very positive. I spoke about the policy statement in Grenada, which can be an example, I think, for other countries to get inspiration from. And also, what is very important also, and we really recommend that, is to develop action plans. And I saw that an action plan is planned in Grenada, which is very positive. SPP is not only being planned, but it's implemented. It's started to be implemented. And so I noticed that span analysis is being done, consultation with stakeholders. We have concrete also schemes like the margins of preference in Jamaica with 35% local content. We have set-asides, we have targets for SMEs, and we have also LCC life cycle costing, which is really starting to permeate the thinking and the practices. And I noticed that the use of total cost of ownership for vehicles, electrical appliances in Belize and Grenada, notably. Also, sustainable procurement is about purchasing products that are more environmental from better companies. And so it's good to see that you're prioritizing some categories. I noticed vehicles, electrical appliances. For example, we heard about LED lighting. We heard about the furniture, of course, in Grenada. We heard about the criteria being developed for constructions. I will finish with some issues. The fear that local production will be excluded or marginalized, the cost. But I notice also that you're aware of those problems and you found ways really to go around in terms, for example, of cost, the use of life cycle costing or total cost of ownership. I noticed that you have the issue of limited resources, especially now with the COVID crisis, the need to really support you in capacity building. I noticed that monitoring of SPP is not yet developed enough, and I encourage you to participate in the next data collection of SDG 12.71. We'll be happy to support you on that. But however, given the high level of awareness and about the benefits of SPP, I'm confident that your country will pursue their efforts and amplify them in the future. And I can tell you that UNEP, and I'm sure our partners of OES, ABD, and OECS are ready to continue supporting you on the path on the journey to SPP. So thank you once again, and thank you, colleagues, for having organized this great webinar.
Thank you, Farid, for those always very insightful closing remarks. I just wanted to quickly thank the panelists and also Adriana, our moderator, for the very interesting and engaging discussion. I also wanted to thank all of the participants for attending and for taking an active role in this webinar. I just wanted to make a quick announcement. If you happen to be a government official from an OECS member state and are interested in learning more about sustainable public procurement, I would like to invite you to apply to an online course on sustainable public procurement that will be launched next month through the OAS School of Governance virtual classroom. You can see the link here at the bottom of the page. It's the application link, and applications will be taken through this coming Monday, February 15th. So with that, we look forward to seeing all of you in our next webinar in April. Have a wonderful afternoon, evening, and weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You have a great weekend too.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ferguson.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.